Many Britons view China as a critical threat and oppose deepening economic ties with the country, a survey has found. The upsurge in anti-Chinese sentiment recorded in the British Foreign Policy Group's 2021 survey on public attitudes comes after an intense focus on the role of Beijing in Britain's infrastructure, including the decision to ban Huawei from the 5G network. And of course, there is the cover-up around the COVID-19 pandemic and, of course, Hong Kong. Let's get reaction now from the director of the British Foreign Policy Group, Sophia Gaston. Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
Good to have you on the show. These figures don't make for surprising reading.
No, I mean, I think anyone who's been tuning into the debate that's been going on in Westminster over the past 18 months will be aware that things have been moving really to a fever pitch. We had quite a long period. I mean, let's not forget this whole golden era of UK-China relations that George Osborne was trying to promote back, in 2014. That wasn't not that long ago. But what's happened is things have soured very quickly over the last couple of years. There's been increasingly concern about China's involvement in a lot of our critical infrastructure, whether that's our 5G technology networks or, our nuclear power plants and so on. And I think the attention that's been put on those and other security vulnerabilities has also coincided with an increasing awareness of China's human rights abuses at home and also some of its incursions into other areas of its territory. So obviously Hong Kong and Taiwan, which Britain has a very clear interest in. So I think, it's been a perfect storm for UK-China relations. And obviously the British people have been watching and listening to that. And we're seeing a really distinct hardening in their opinions towards China. And it's going to be hard to turn that around.
However, we need their investment and we need their cheap, high-quality manufactured goods, don't we? So they've got us over a barrel.
Well, it is true that, over the past 10, 20 years, we have been integrating our economies. And it's not just that we've been integrating with China, we've been integrating with the world. And generally, that's a good thing. And I think, we also in this survey asked about globalization, and most Brits do recognize that connectivity has brought a lot of economic prosperity and that it's a good thing. The problem with China is that, and this is very true if you look at our friends and partners in Australia and what's happened to them, the more that you develop that kind of economic dependence, the more you create opportunities for security vulnerabilities and kind of coercion on a political level. So we have to be very careful. As you say, we need to have a degree of pragmatism about this. We do still need to be integrated to some degree. Economic relationships with China can be had in a safe way, but we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves first. And we also need to be able to engage with China in a sensible way around shared challenges like climate change. This is a very different situation to the Cold War. China is not only very integrated into the global economy, but their actions on climate change will affect us all. So quite a difficult picture there for the government, I think, to turn things around and make that positive case.
I wonder, though, by making a stand against China, and of course there are huge issues, we'll come to COVID in a second, but if you look at the decision on Huawei and 5G, essentially we've cut our nose off to spite our faces, haven't we? The Huawei 5G rollout was going to be quicker and cheaper, so we will be less well connected because of this political decision.
Well, I think it's not just a political decision, it's a security decision. The fact is there's so
much telecommunications technology bedded into our system already, isn't it?
Yes.
GPRS, 3G, 4G, it's all been established by the Chinese, or at least in part.
Yes, and this is one of the tricky things about the Huawei decision is that operators also need to be stripping out a lot of their involvement in 4G. I think it's certainly true that we were a bit naive and complacent in the past about some of these vulnerabilities. And I think really the wake-up call is that Britain, we need to be working with our allies to say, why is it the case that only China is able to be competitive in these tenders for these infrastructure projects? They can do things more cheaply and faster than we can. There's no reason why that should be the case. So we just need to, they have an absolute hybrid market and state, and they also have a hybrid between their civilian and defensive capabilities. And we just haven't been thinking in that way. So I think, we're hosting the G7 summit in June. There's also, we're obviously going to be bringing in a few of our democratic partners like Australia and India and South Korea to that meeting. And I think really top of the agenda has to be this question of how we can get more competitive in the West in those kind of infrastructure tenders.
Indeed. Now, we've seen lies, obfuscation and cover-up when it comes to the outbreak of COVID-19. Also, big concern over the human rights record of China, political repression in Hong Kong, mass incarceration and forced sterilisation of Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province. How exactly can we stand up to this power? It must be by working with our allies.
Yes, indeed. I think that's right. And I don't think Britain will be going it alone on this. I think certainly there are early conversations with Washington now. President Biden, his administration is very attuned to these issues. Also, obviously, our partners in the European Union, Germany and France. I think one of the trickiest things has been that everybody is taking a slightly different approach on balancing this economic and security question. And, everybody's falling in a slightly different space along the spectrum. So what we need to do is focus on our common objectives and our common values and be working together where we can. Because as you say, just one voice on the world stage can be a lonely one. We do have our allies, and one of the biggest most damaging things in terms of global power dynamics over the past 4 or 5 years is that, we've been very consumed with dealing with Brexit. Trump has obviously caused a huge amount of instability. The Western Liberal Alliance hasn't been in great shape. We need to get back at the table together, working together and focusing on what we share. Otherwise, we'll never be able to challenge these autocratic states and find solutions to a much more peaceful and prosperous world.
Indeed so. Sophia, thank you very much for joining us. Sophia Gaston is director at the British Foreign Policy Group. What are your thoughts? Do you think we should